have loving and supportive people in your life, like Mackenzie, my parents, my grandfather, my grandmother, you end up being able to take risk. Because I think it's one of those things, you know, it doesn't, you kind of know somebody's got your back. And so it's just, I don't even think you're thinking about it logically, it's an emotional thing. So
That's
for
really
me,
interesting. You think that unconditional love, if you feel and experience unconditional love,
I think it helps you take risk in life. And by the way,
Yeah.
I think it's probably true of all kinds of risks in life, not just starting a business. I mean, life is full of different risks. And I think that when you think about the things that you will regret when you're 80, they are almost always the things that you did not do. They are acts of omission. Very rarely are you going to regret something that you did and it failed and didn't work or whatever. But the acts of omission, the thing, you know, it's not, and again, I'm not just talking about business things. It's like, you know, I loved that person and I never told them. And then, you know, 50 years later, you'd be like, why didn't I tell her? You know, why didn't I go after it? So that's the kind of life regret that is very hard to be happy about when you're telling yourself in a private moment that story of your life. So I think it's anyway, I've won that lottery. I won that lottery of having so many people in my life who have given me that unconditional love. And I do think, you know, Mackenzie's definitely one of those. And so we moved, and then Mackenzie, who has basically no skill in this area at all, really, I mean, you're the least suited person for this. She did our accounting for like the first year. Was it the first year? Something like that. And she did it well. I mean, that's what's amazing. It is true, you know, she's a big reader, I'm a big reader, but that's not why I picked books. I picked books because there were more items in the book category than any other category, and so you could build universal selection. There were 3 million in 1994 when I was pulling this idea together. The 3 million different books active and in print at any given time, and the largest physical bookstores only had about 150,000 different titles. And so I could see how you could make a bookstore online with universal selection. Every book ever printed, even the out-of-print ones, was the original vision for the company. And so that's why books.
And when did you know that Amazon is going to be something way bigger than just a bookstore?
Well, I knew that the books, strangely, because I was very prepared for this to take a really long time. I knew that the books business was going to be successful in the first 30 days. I was shocked at how many books we sold. We were ill-prepared. You know, we had only 10 people in the company at that time, and most of them were software engineers. And so everybody, including me and the software engineers, were all like packing boxes. We didn't even have packing tables. And we were on our hands and knees on a concrete floor packing the boxes. And at about, you know, 1 or 2 in the morning, I said to one of my software engineering colleagues, I said, you know, Paul, this is killing my knees. We need to get knee pads. And Paul looked at me and he's like, Jeff, we need to get packing tables. and I was like, oh my God, that is such a good idea. The next day I bought packing tables and it doubled our productivity and probably saved our backs and our knees too.
But nevertheless, I mean, Amazon had serious crises. In 2002, you went almost...
we haven't had any existential crises, knock on wood. I don't want to jinx anything. But we've had a lot of kind of dramatic events. I remember early on, we only had 125 employees when Barnes & Noble, the big United States bookseller, opened their online website to compete against us, barnesandnoble.com. We'd had about a 2-year window. We opened in 95, they opened in 97. And at that time, all of the headlines, and the funniest, were about how we were about to be destroyed by this much larger company. We had 125 employees and $60 million a year in annual sales, 60 million with an M. And that, and Barnes & Noble at the time had 30,000 employees and about $3 billion in sales. So they were giant, we were tiny, and we had limited resources. And the headlines were very negative about Amazon. And the one that's most memorable was just Amazon.toast. And so I called an all-hands meeting, which was not hard to do with just 125 people. And we got in a room, and because it was so scary for all of us, this idea that now we finally had a big competitor, that literally everybody's parents were calling and saying, are you okay? It's usually the moms calling and asking their children, are you going to be okay? So, and I said, look, it's okay to be afraid, but don't be afraid of our competitors, because they're never going to send us any money. Be afraid of our customers. And if we just stay focused on them, and instead of obsessing over this big competitor that we just got, we'll be fine. And I really do believe that. I think that if you stay focused, then the more drama there is and everything else, no matter what the drama is, whatever the external distraction is, what your response to it should be to double down on the customer, satisfying them, not just satisfying them, delighting them.
You've mentioned that you're trying to fend off day 2.
Yeah.
And you've said that day 2 is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciatingly painful decline, followed by death.
Yeah.
That is why it is always day 1.
Yeah.
How's that work?
Well, so day 1, this is a phrase that we use at Amazon all the time. I've been using it in my first annual shareholder letter from 20 years ago. And we say it's always day 1, and it needs to be day 1 for the reason that you just mentioned. And so the real question for me is, how do you go about maintaining a day 1 culture? It's great to have the scale of Amazon. We have financial resources, we have lots of brilliant people, we can accomplish great things, we have global scope, we have operations all over the world. But the downside of that is that you can lose your nimbleness, you can lose your entrepreneurial spirit, you can lose that kind of heart that small companies often have. And so if you could have the best of both worlds, if you can have that entrepreneurial spirit and heart, while at the same time having all the advantages that come with scale and scope, think of the things that you could do. And so the question is, how do you achieve that? The scale is good because it makes you robust. A big boxer can take a punch to the head. The question is, you also want to dodge those punches. So you'd like to be nimble. You want to be big and nimble. And I find there are a lot of things that are protective of the day 1 mentality. I already spent some time on one of them, which is customer obsession. I think that's the most important thing. If you can, and it gets harder as you get bigger. When you're a little tiny company, say you're a 10-person startup company, every single person in the company is focused on the customer. When you get to be a bigger company, you've got middle managers, and you've got all these layers, and those people aren't on the front lines. They're not interacting with customers every day. They're insulated from customers, and they start to manage not the customer happiness directly, but they start to manage through proxies like metrics and processes, and some of those things can become bureaucratic. So it's very challenging, but one of the things that happens is the decision-making velocity slows down. And I think one of the reasons that happens is that people, junior executives inside the big company, start to model all decisions as if they are heavyweight, irreversible, highly consequential decisions. And so even two-way doors, you make a decision, it's the wrong decision, you can just back through the door and try again. Even those reversible decisions start to be made with heavyweight processes. And so you can teach people that these pitfalls and traps, and then teach them to avoid those traps. And that's what we're trying to do at Amazon, so that we can maintain our inventiveness and our heart and our kind of small company spirit, even as we have the scale and scope of a larger question. And we talk about it as customer obsession as opposed to competitor obsession. And I have seen over and over again companies talk about that they're customer focused, but really when I pay close attention to them, I believe they are competitor focused. And that's just a completely different mentality. By the way, competitor focus can work, but I don't think it works in the long run as well as customer focused. For one thing, once you're the leader, if your whole culture is competitor obsessed,
it's kind of hard to stay energized and motivated if you're out in front. Whereas customers are always unsatisfied, they're always discontent, they always want more. And so no matter how far you get out there in front of your competitors, you're still behind your customers. So they're always pulling you along. So customer obsession is a deep principle that underlies everything we do. Another one is eagerness to invent. So we love to pioneer. And when we have done, by the way, whenever we have tried to do something in a kind of Me Too fashion, we have failed at it. We need to have something that is differentiated, unique, something that customers are going to like, that we're kind of leading with. So that's another element that works for us. And then another one is long-term thinking. We are willing to take some time and be patient with our business initiatives, and that runs through everything. So a lot of our competitors might have 2 to 3 year kind of time frames, and we might have more of a 5 to 7 year sort of time frame. And then the last one, operational excellence. So literally, how do you have high standards around, identifying defects, fixing defects at the root, all of those kinds of things that lead to what I think also can be in a simpler way just stated as professionalism, that you want to do things right just for the sake of doing them right.
First of all, when any criticism, my approach to criticism and what I teach and preach inside Amazon is, when you're criticized, first look in a mirror and decide, are your critics right? If they're right, change. Don't resist.
Right?
No. But not in this case. But we've had critics be right before, and we've changed. We have made mistakes, and I can go through a long list. Probably one of the early most painful ones. It's so stupid. It's hard to believe how we ever did it. But early on with the Kindle, maybe the first year of the Kindle or the second year of the Kindle, we had accidentally, illegally sold. Are given away, I guess, copies of the famous novel 1984 because it had a complicated copyright history. It was in copyright in the US and not in the UK or something strange like this. So it was in the public domain, but only in certain geographies. And we had screwed that up. And somehow, and this is a kind of mistake that only a corporation can make. An individual can't make this mistake because somehow it's like it happens at the intersections of the different teams. So you've got the legal department saying, "Oh crap, we've made this mistake," and you've got the books team. Anyway, the answer that the company came up with was to, without any notice or warning, just electronically go into everybody's Kindle who had downloaded that book and just disappear it. So it would be as if we walked into your bedroom in the middle of the night, found your bookshelf, and just took that book away. And so we were rightly criticized for that. One of the reasons we have been able to extend into new business areas, and first new product categories, going way back, we just sold books, and then we started selling music and DVDs and electronics and toys and so on. And then we've extended into electronic reading with Kindle. The reason customers have been receptive, in large part, to our new initiatives is because we have worked hard to earn trust with them. Earning trust with customers is a valuable business asset. And if you mistreat their data, they will know. They will figure it out. Customers are very smart. You should never underestimate customers.